minutes to bring together reflections and round up from the discussions from today. So if I could maybe briefly kick off with a reflection on the bigger picture here. Research from the IMF last year found that an estimated adaptation finance gap of about $200 billion per year exists in Asia Pacific. So adaptation finance is very scarce. And at the same time, studies find that only around 10% of climate finance is going to the local level. So improving the access and ability to use affordable financial services, such as access to credit, to savings, to insurance, to e-money services, these kind of things is crucial in supporting the poorest and most vulnerable people and communities to proactively adapt, manage, and recover from climate-related shocks. Barriers to financial inclusion include, and I'm grouping these into three main groups. A lack of availability of financial services, particularly related to services designed to support poor and vulnerable communities. In a sort of second bucket, a lack of access, and that's in terms of access to financial institutions, both physically and digitally, for reasons because of unequal access to technology, and these kind of institutions such as banks, but also more broader financial institutions. The ability to meet the high barriers to entry as well, so documentation requirements for opening accounts, minimum balance requirements, the kind of documentation needed to make transactions, a lack of financial knowledge and literacy, and a lack of trust in financial institutions, owing from the track record that local people have had with financial institutions. And the third bucket of barriers I'll put there is a lack of data on who has access, on gendered differences in need, and of understanding social, cultural norms that affect the needs of financial services, and evidence and knowledge generation to inform decisions on this. So if we maybe try to get everyone's views now as well on what you think, how you'd rank these barriers and what everyone thinks are some of the biggest barriers to financial inclusion. If we can go to a Mentimeter poll. So the QR code is on the screens, and you have the little triangle QR codes if you could open up the poll. So the question is, in your opinion, what are the top 3 main barriers to scaling up pro-poor financial services? Okay, so we're getting some results in. It sounds like the top financial barrier is looking like low financial literacy. And the second is the lack of financial products.
Legal and regulatory.
Which is fighting a bit with legal and regulatory barriers. So, yeah, there seems to be quite some overlap in some of the top barriers. Okay, and to reflect on that, if we move on to the next Mentimeter question, which is which financial inclusion products and strategies discussed in the forum did you find most inspiring? So what are some of the solutions, some of the best ways to address some of the barriers? Great. So we're getting a lot of responses in insurance, community-based saving groups, microinsurance, climate responsive digital finance, community organized cooperative credit. Yeah, a range of solutions coming in. Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so if we now turn to some reflections from the working group sessions where some of these kind of solutions were discussed in more detail. So it'd be great to hear back from each of the working groups in turn, just to hear some reflections on the discussions and yeah, just kind of challenges and experiences that were being heard. If I briefly recap on the three questions for the working groups, the first was the potential reforms needed to scale up inclusive pro-poor financial services for climate resilience. The second working group question was the better targeting of financial inclusion investments to address the needs of poor and vulnerable communities, particularly women. And the third working group discussed the ways that financial inclusion investments by civil society organizations, private sector, and development partners can be scaled up and institutionalized. So if I could invite the first working group to kick off with reflections.
Well, good afternoon. You can say good afternoon. All right. Okay. On behalf of Group 1, I am a forced volunteer to share these reflections with you, but I am very honored to share with you all today about very exciting suggestions and recommendations emerged from our group. So we began with discussing type of financial inclusion services. So we categorized them into few, starting with insurance. Again, we discussed about index-based insurance, parametric insurance, loss-based insurance, and so on and so forth. By the way, I'm not a financial specialist, so pardon with me if I am using technical jargon incorrectly, but I will try to be as simple as possible. So we discuss about insurance product around index-based, parametric, and loss-based insurance products. Then we discuss about savings. Again, we discuss about individual savings, group savings, as well as community investment funds, community development funds, and related instruments. Then we discuss about credits. Within that, we discuss about loans, moratorium on loan repayments, as well as emergency top-up loans in case of any climate shocks. As well as index-based credit, we discuss about those as potential solutions. Then we discuss about cash transfer mechanisms, including those related to social protections. We also discuss about payments, including remittance, access to remittance, as well as mobile payments, and so on and so forth. So those are the kind of financial inclusive services that we discussed, starting from insurance, serving, credit, cash transfer mechanisms, and payments. Then we discussed about the challenges, and we had range of challenges in line with the point that the moderator just discussed. So to begin with, we discuss about requirements. Even to have the access, they need to have a bank account, and we all know that in most of our countries that we are working for, having a bank account seems to be simple, but it is not that so simple. So having a bank account itself is a major challenge. And then the requirement for opening bank account and other associate requirements were also highlighted. Again, during the discussion, it was suggested that simplified forms and requirements to be addressed to, amplify the access to financing, inclusive financing. And then we discuss about digital infrastructure needs, and this is also one of the biggest challenges in some of the Asian countries and the Pacific countries that we are working for. And then we also, our groups also discuss about, regulation which are required to facilitate group accounts going beyond the individual accounts. That was also one of the challenge that we need to work on and identify as a potential opportunity to address these challenges. And then minimum earning was another challenge, minimum earning to open the account as well as minimum earning to maintain the account, minimum balance, if I put in that way. So those were also some of the challenges that our group discussed. And then, of course, gender and social norms as well as exclusions were discussed as well. And then some of the other factors such as geographic distance to the service points, bank, and machines, and so on and so forth were discussed. Then we also discuss about literacy in general. Financial and digital literacy in particular were discussed as key barriers for these issues. Then we also discuss about, we were not sure the right word, but earlier we discussed about corruptions, and then maybe we rephrase it as malpractices by agents, groups or collectors, those who are facilitating some of these financing solutions. Another challenge was the speed in the face of climate change. Today morning also we discussed that some policies, some regulatory mechanisms might take months, if not years, whereas we are in a kind of climate emergency, so that actions are needed urgently. So there is a dilemma about the speed speed of these financial services in the face of climate change. So that was another big challenge that our groups discussed. Then we discussed about how could CRPP support this endeavor. So all the group members suggested that CRPP is such a powerful convening platforms with key actors, and each of these actors have their own network. So how could this CRPP play a role of kind of network approach, so that while CRPP itself is a convening platform, how could each agency use their constituencies to influence their actors and their partners to take these services or actions forward and to the next level. And then we also discuss about CRPP playing kind of a catalytic role in unlocking finances, right? Unlocking catalytic finance via lines of credit or TAs, targeting different audiences, including civil society, regulators, policymakers, the private sector, just to name few, so that it become a catalytic role, so that it will lead to a bigger impact on the ground through kind of a snowball effect, right? So that instead of just, investing money, but play a catalytic financing role, so that impact would be much higher. Then also we discussed and suggested that piloting and testing some of the good practices, specifically through, trust fund, that can be later on scaled up through, investment fund. within ADB as well as beyond ADB. So that, you know, this platform CRPP become a kind of laboratory to test out or innovate some of the solutions that we want to, you know, practice or apply in the countries, and then amplify through other financial mechanisms and instruments within the region was highlighted. And then, of course, related to that, also suggested that ADB and other multilateral have multiple instruments or financial solutions or investment frameworks or program that CRPP can tap into. So that was also highlighted. And then advocacy role, going beyond ADB and, you know, working with ADB member countries as well as other development partners were highlighted. And then, of course, role of CRPP to play a kind of advocacy role on pro-poor approaches related to climate resilience climate adaptation was highlighted. Last but not least, I know it's a long list, but the last but not least, the role of CRPP as a knowledge manager, because this forum itself is a big forum, but, you know, if we bring all our partners together from various countries that we all are working for, it's a huge network. So how could the CRPP play a kind of knowledge hub, bringing success stories as well as not so success stories? We believe that, you know, as human beings, we learn from mistake, perhaps more than the successes. So also bringing the not so success stories into this kind of forum, so that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and we can build on the successes, but also avoid the pitfalls that we might see during the journey. This is all from on behalf of our group. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. If we can move on to the second working group, please. Sorry, just also to say a request to please keep the feedback concise. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be reporting on the working group 2, how can financial inclusion investments be better targeted to address or used for climate resilience needs of poor and vulnerable communities, particularly women, and we'll still go through the types of investments that are available, what are some of the opportunities and challenges, and where the CRPP can support. So, in the group, there were representatives of, I hope I will not miss anyone, of course, from the Philippines, Nepal, Pakistan, Indonesia, Cambodia, and Vanuatu, and also some representatives from the development partners. So apologies if I missed anyone. So let me go through quickly on the types of investments. I will not identify specific ones, but maybe just the common themes that arise. We have savings, insurance, cooperatives, cash transfers, digital payments, credits, loans, grants. There were mentions of attempts to set up parametric insurance. Of course, there were the national climate funds, microfinance, and other local financial initiatives. And let me go through quickly on the challenges that were identified present in both the demand and supply side. First is how to make these mechanisms accessible for everyone. There were lack of climate-related insurance products and climate-related finance products that are actually inclusive and accessible. There's lack of literacy when it comes to what are the mechanisms and the interventions that are present, how to access this, and even capacities to, you know, develop proposals or activities that would allow for the access. There were connectivity issues that were mentioned, especially when it comes to digital payments, digitalization, and all of these things that that concerns financial transfer of finance for communities. There were also mention of fragmented, siloed approaches, which thereby requires the need for holistic approach for communities to maximize these resources and opportunities present at the local level, and low foresight while some interventions were identified as one-off or standalone and lacks the vision for sustainability. So some of the opportunities include the need to develop systems, registries, and databases that would guide the development and implementation of programs. Of course, skills development in response to the needed skills to access this and implement these. increase coherence and coordination, leverage local government units' convening powers and capabilities to also bring everyone together and strengthen local coordination and connect the dots, because all of the elements are already in place. It's just a matter of how to coordinate and put this together, and also to go beyond pilot testing and see how these interventions can be sustained and replicated. And then the last part would be on how the CRPP can support. The major theme would be to set up or improve the enabling environments to ensure the inclusion, to ensure inclusion particularly by women, and ensure as well the sustainability of these initiatives. There are three themes. The first one is to enhance coordination at local level. This includes coordination among government partners and communities. And ensuring that whatever is happening at the local level is actually taken into account at the subnational and national levels, and vice versa. So there should be both the horizontal, vertical coordination, and also top-down and bottom-up coordination. Strengthen existing mechanisms and strengthen and scale up existing mechanisms and explore new ones. Building also the needed infrastructure based on the circumstances by each communities. And lastly is to develop data, evidence, and even science-based, locally led programs and initiatives that will ensure that the interventions are actually tailored to the needs of the communities, making it fit for purpose. I hope that I was able to capture all the notes from the group too. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If I could invite the third working group to feedback, please.
Hi. Sorry. Sorry. Magandang hapon. Good afternoon. I am Bench from the Philippines. And let me share with you our rich discussion on back there at Group 3. The question is, how can financial inclusion investments by civil CSOs, private sector, and development partners can be scaled up and institutionalized? We then realized that we really got a wealthy and rich experiences and examples coming from RMI, our country, the Philippines, Indonesia, India, Cambodia. Like there are women's safety nets programs that promote women protections. There are community-based savings group and initiative at the local level. There are tax exemptions to climate resilience efforts in some countries, and innovative voucher systems and microinsurance. So those are just few examples from our discussion. But there are also challenges and opportunities that we identified. So let me start in sharing with you the challenges. First there are limited infrastructure, particularly in resolving digital innovations. There are limited and lack of infrastructures in the community, especially those vulnerable areas. There are challenges on sustaining good initiatives at the local level. So those good and success stories should be elevated and scaled up. But however, some of them are not really sustained at the community level. There are also limitations in terms of legislation and evidence-based regulation in different countries. And although there are a lot of organizations, private sectors, and CSOs that are working on climate resilience, we are still doing it in silo. So some of the opportunities are, there are dedicated organizations in promoting financial resilience, obviously, because we are here right now. And there are initiatives like a package approach. So there are intervention that already has an holistic approach. Like there are capacity buildings, there are support to tailored fit instruments, coordination with the government, and context-based approaches. There are presence of sector-based groups such as religious groups also in the community. and we have a good opportunity to work with technical institution, financial institution at the community level. Now, what we wanted to ask to CRPP is that you continue and put on more dialogue such as this, because it's actually good platform in bringing together like-minded organizations such as this in finding solution and working at the regional level together. So that could also answer siloed approaches, right? And we are also would like to emphasize that maybe CRPP can develop regional knowledge and evidence-based documentation or platform that could be shared to different countries. That maybe a documentation or records of good and success stories from different countries. And lastly, CRPP to speak at the regional level to leverage exciting approaches and innovation coming from the community level and use this to scale up on innovation, incentivize support, resilience through knowledge generation, community resilience building, and of course financing those projects. I think that's it for Group 3. Maraming salamat. Good afternoon.
Okay. Thank you so much to the three groups for feeding back. It sounds like there was a lot of rich discussion coming out of the working group sessions, a lot of key points around identifying the types of financial services that are and can be the most useful. A lot of discussions around different barriers on different types of financial services, and some useful points on how CRPP and other development partners and stakeholders can support the strengthening and improving of financial services. I'm now going to invite some interventions from selected speakers to reflect on what they've been hearing over the course of today, and what kind of opportunities that they are seeing for scaling up financial inclusion services for climate resilience. So if I could start by inviting Rata Chan, the Deputy General Director of the Social Development Directorate in the Ministry of Women's Affairs in Cambodia. If you could please make an intervention. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and it is my honor to be representative on behalf of my Cambodian team. So during the 2 full-day sessions, it is very lively discussion and very vital conversation, as well as very insightful thought and strategy over the past 2 days. I would reflect on financial inclusion in 4 levels. My interest captured during the 2-day session. So firstly, we refer to policy level. Secondly, refer to program level. And thirdly, refer to implementation level, project cycle. And lastly, refer to M&E. So as we may know that we have one bird, leave no one behind. So this is this can make implication. So in order to leave no one behind, so we really require financial inclusion. And to think deeply, to think in detail, so who are the most needed group? Who are the most vulnerable group that need some help? Need help or social protection or social security. So this is just policy level. So in that regard, so we need more financial inclusion input to focus on some kind of precise research, data, accurate data, to perform policy recommendation or policy briefs to make a clear recommendation what kind of program or policy, what kind of program or project should be implemented at the most targeted area. And while we say about the program level, so we also need to consider about the financial inclusion, refer to different socio-economic background for different group that we need to focus on, like people in coastal areas, so they may prone to floods or other fragile disaster, some kind of fragile economic livelihood like that. Also, people who live in mountainous area, whether they are prone to cyclones, or what kind of particular program that we need to expand to look at to those areas. Also, we may look at informal economic as well, where a lot of women have a lot of like street vendor, tuk-tuk driver, whether they may prone to those kind of climate risk and climate disaster, heat stress or other problem due to climate change. Also, we consider about the, this is still in program level, about the disaster risk reduction, whether we need to consider about the shelter, and this one also refer to financial inclusion, so whether we need to design a particular shelter for different socio-economic background group, whether the different religion, whether they have some kind of particular needs for different vulnerable group from different religious background or socio-economic background like that. So this really need a social, financial inclusion needed. And when we say about the project implementation level, we also need to focus on financial knowledge, financial management, digital knowledge, crop insurance, some kind of insurance like that. So because people who are poor or who are vulnerable in the community, so they may lack of this kind of knowledge or skills. So we need to focus on this activity. And when we need to focus on this activity, so we need to consider about the what kind of financial equity or financial inclusiveness should be provided to those targeted beneficiaries. And also we need to consider about the money as well, because whether our financial inclusion program, it is effective or not, whether it results in our expected output or outcome or not, yes. So we need to make sure that what we project to the community, it is equitable, it is inclusive, not just in the words, but when it practice in results, whether it is go to the right direction or go on the right tracks based on our policy, is consistently with our policy program or project based as well. And I think overall it is very important for financial inclusion because we need to be consistent since the policy level till the implementation level as well as M&E. And whether we should, what kind of best practice that we have. In Cambodia, we have also, and last week we just launched this kind of national social protection policy framework for 10 years from 2024 to 2035. So climate change and social protection mentioned in there. And previously, Cambodian government has provided this kind of social protection scheme to the poor for healthcare access as well as for pregnant women and children under 2 years old to get the cash transfer. So this is we have been implemented It implicates financial inclusion as well, because we think about the poor and pro-poor, the most vulnerable one, that they need to have this kind of social security scheme to support them. So it is my overall conclusion. So thank you for having me on the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And really interesting and useful points about targeting to the most vulnerable groups, including those in the informal economy, and including the nuances of different groups as well. Thank you. If I could invite Sumaira Rafiq, Deputy Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Pakistan, please.
Thank you. So before I share the takeaways from today's sessions, I would like to take this opportunity to say that this forum has been an incredible learning experience for everyone here, because it provided us opportunity to dive deep into the challenges and explore some new ideas and solutions. Thanks to the participants from diverse backgrounds and diverse expertise. So today's discussions have reinforced this fact that the climate change is not just an environmental challenge. So it's a profound social, economic, and financial challenge for the vulnerable communities. It disproportionately affects the vulnerable communities because those communities who do not have access to financial services and financial products, they suffer the most because at the time of the crisis, they are not ready. So they do not have this ability to cope with the crisis and to adapt to the shocks. During these climate crises, these communities are left with no choice but to adopt some of the strategies that are not very useful or sometimes which are harmful. Like they are selling their productive assets and they are selling their agricultural lands, and in some extreme scenarios, they are forced to leave their houses and they are displaced and their children are dropped out of schools. So it only deepens their vulnerabilities. So this shows that greater access to financial services and products, it will help them increase their resilience and to build some sustainable livelihoods for themselves. So there is a clear connection between financial inclusion and climate resilience, first of all. But all of us know from today's discussions that it is not an easy job, so it involves so many challenges. First of all, financial inclusion is considered as something like access to banking services or like being able to withdraw money from bank. So it is beyond that. I will quote an example here. In 2018, when I was working with Benazir Income Support Program, at that time, the payments to beneficiaries were transitioning from debit card payment, like manual payments, to biometric verification system of payment. But during COVID-19 crisis and 2022 floods, those payments were made digitally, electronic means of payments. At that time, there were many reports published which indicated that financial inclusion has increased many folds throughout the world, not just in Pakistan. That's true, but it also brought some new set of challenges because it is just transactional. So it can be taken as an opportunity as well because it is a first step towards financial inclusion. So taking it as an opportunity, we can use it to provide some benefits to the vulnerable communities. For vulnerable communities, financial inclusion is beyond digital payments. It is related to designing financial services and products in a way that could address climate risks, and those should be targeted for vulnerable communities, such as farmers who are dealing with unpredictable weather patterns or informal workers who lose their livelihoods during the climate shocks. Another biggest challenge is the limited financial literacy. Many low-income households are unfamiliar with or they are reluctant to use banking services based on their past experiences or maybe due to some complex procedures involved or hidden cost involved with such banking services. So to bridge this gap, it requires that targeted financial literacy initiatives should be introduced, which are linked with social protection programs, and financial products such as savings schemes should be incentivized to encourage the vulnerable communities to participate in those saving schemes. So I will again quote two examples here. I was discussing with my colleague from the think tank because they have been working on those initiatives. So digital financial literacy training program have been introduced by Benazir Income Support Program. And under this program, 250,000 women beneficiaries have been provided the financial literacy trainings. So it is a milestone which has been achieved, and on the basis of this pilot project, all beneficiaries will be provided those trainings. And the second initiative is Hybrid Social Protection Scheme, and it has been implemented in collaboration with World Bank. So this is the first co-contributory savings scheme in Pakistan. It involves 40% matching contributions from the government of Pakistan to encourage the beneficiaries who are participating in saving schemes. So as we reflect on these challenges, it has become clear that financial inclusion must be at the heart of any poverty reduction and climate adaptation strategy. So it involves actions from everyone, specifically from governments. They must integrate financial services into social protection schemes. And financial institutions, they should also step up and develop some affordable and climate responsive products. So from today's discussions, now everyone knows, sitting here, that we have the knowledge and we have this commitment to make financial inclusion a driver for climate resilience. What we need now is some decisive action and strong partnerships and shared determination to leave no one behind. So the governments, financial institutions, development partners, central banks, think tanks who are doing some incredible job, and communities, we all need to join hands to make this region a sustainable, inclusive, and a prosperous place to live for all. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Samara, and great to hear about your experiences in relation to designing financial services and products in a way that supports the most vulnerable and poorest communities. If I could now please pass to, and forgive me for the pronunciation, Duang Mani Phongchup, in the Office of the National and Economic Social Development Council in Thailand. Hi.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to begin to thank the organizer and all participants for this opportunity to come together and exchange the insight on the climate resilience. My name is Duang Mani Phongchup. Yes, I'm from the Office of National and Economic Social Development Council in Thailand. During the group discussion from today and yesterday, one question that's coming up around for me is that how to connect between the top-down and bottom-up approach to make sure that the climate resilience initiative can go to the local community successfully and make sure it is sustained and also somehow to scaling up. Because NESDC, my office, is a central planning agency. We have to plan and formulate the 20 national strategy plan and also 5-year national economic and social development plan. We are also providing the policy recommendation to the ministry, cabinet, and also other stakeholders as well. We also have the 4 regional office to make sure that the local authority or local government formulate their plan in line with the national plan as well. So for the topic about the scaling up financial inclusion for the climate resilience, I would like to highlight some key initiatives related to pro-poor approach that we have embedded in the 13 National Economic and Social Development Plan. This plan is the key for implementing the second 5-year of the national strategy that's setting the direction for the Thailand development from 2023 to 2027. This plan also aims to transform Thailand into a progressive society with a sustainable value-creating economy. Now, I will highlight some of the pro-poor development strategy that I think is pro-poor approach in the 5-year of NESDP plan. The first one that we would like to developing emergency preparedness and response to the shock. It could be monetary and non-monetary relief. We also would like to identify where and who most vulnerable as well. The second one is to enhancing the efficiency and variety of insurance system, especially for agricultural production, because in Thailand we have many agriculture patterns, and we still have like a few agricultural insurance product. This is, we would like to have the insurance that farmer can afford, can access and affordable to buy the insurance, I would say. This is to make sure that they can have the financial stability in the, during the disaster or facing the other risks. Another one is we also would like to review the budget allocation to prioritize the risk reduction and preventing the measure over emergency response and rehabilitation. This is to ensure that budget allocation is focused on key areas affected by natural disaster and climate change, rather than reacting to the crisis as well. Okay. Finally, we also have like enhancing the capacity of people and community to cope with the natural disaster and climate change. Finally, from my perspective, advancing financial inclusion to build climate resilience is crucial, especially in formulating national development strategy. This ensures that the transition toward more sustainable and climate resilient in the future. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much. We have 2 more speakers, and then Nanki will be wrapping up. And apologies, but if the remaining 2 speakers could please keep it concise. Then I will now pass to Jacob Lorentzen, Program Manager at the Nordic Development Fund.
Great, thank you. And yes, indeed, I am Jacob, and I'm representing the Nordic Development Fund here today. We are one of the donors of the CRPP Trust Fund, and maybe just a few quick words on my organization, as I'm not sure everyone in the room is familiar with us. We are a Nordic IFI, owned and financed by the 5 Nordic countries, and we've been around for almost 4 decades. We have a mandate to work in the intersection of climate and development, and we provide financing to innovative programs such as the CRPP. And against this backdrop, financial inclusion resonates very well with our mandate. It is an important piece in the puzzle when we are talking about improvements in livelihoods. And as we have heard here today, it also contains the potential to advance the green agenda. We have talked about the topic today from different angles and perspectives. We heard from Helen this morning about the importance of getting the right policy frameworks in place. And in the same session, we heard from Sai how technology can help us leapfrog. We've also had dedicated sessions about how women can act as agents of change in relation to financial inclusion. And while listening throughout the day, I've often had the impression that the discussions and presentations have been centered around individuals. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It is deeply relevant, but if I am to add another sort of different perspective during my little speaking slot here, I would say let's not forget about the trade and businesses when we talk about financial inclusion, particularly the SMEs. If we can get this type of companies to flourish, we know that they hold transformative potential for individuals and communities as a whole. What we tend to see, particularly in less advanced countries, is that SMEs struggle with financial inclusion. They struggle getting access to banking services to advance their services. The reason often being that banks perceive loans to this segment as more risky, and in return, the interest rates on the credit lines goes up, often to a level where it's not viable for SMEs and it hinders financial inclusion. And at NDF, we have witnessed this scenario play out across Africa, and to combat this, we have provided financing to the African Guarantee Fund, Guarantee Facility, AGF as we call it. This is a facility that works together with domestic banks on the continent to provide guarantees for their credit lines. So in case SME is defaulting on a loan, AGF comes in and absorbs some of the bank's losses, to put it very simply. And with this approach, risk perception amongst banks and an extension hereof, the interest rates have decreased, and in return, we see an increase in financial inclusion amongst SMEs. This is a model that works, and here comes sort of the cherry on the top, if I can use that phrase. All of this can be achieved while also targeting other objectives. So inside the AGF, the African Development Bank, for instance, have a separate gender window that promotes female-led SMEs. And we at NDF have financed a green window, targeting SMEs that contribute to mitigate climate change throughout their respective business models. So that was just sort of an alternative perspective to add to the discussions I've heard here today. Hope it can serve as some food for thought, and thank you for the opportunity to share my reflections, and back to you, moderator.
Great, thank you. And if I can now pass to Jessie Kirks, Senior Social Development Advisor with the FCDO. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Hi everyone. I'm Jessie Kirk. As you heard, I'm a Senior Social Development Advisor at the UK Government's FCDO. And I wanted to use this spot to zoom out to how we started the conference, looking at this specific nexus between gender, poverty, and climate adaptation. And to really kind of go back to this point that advancing gender equality, leave no one behind, within international climate action matters. There is a strong business case for why we need to do this, which we've heard really strongly throughout the last 2 days. There's a strong moral case, and there is a case for urgent action. And this nexus, it really matters to the UK government. The UK's funding contribution to CRPP is part of a larger UK aid funded programme called Climate Action for a Resilient Asia, CARA. We like to call things after women, it seems. We're in the process of agreeing a wider gender strategy and action plan for CARA with all our partners in quite a consultative process through a community of practice. That has started to identify 4 shifts that matter for this nexus. Firstly is gender-responsive climate finance, including promoting inclusive finance. Secondly is around supporting national, local climate adaptation policies, plans and strategies to be really explicit on how can they be inclusive for gender equality and social inclusion. Thirdly is around inclusive climate information and tools and knowledge, including supporting the work of grassroots women in mapping risk, which we've had a lot about. And fourthly is around supporting women and marginalised groups' decision-making, leadership and collective action, which again has been a fundamental part of the last 2 days. Now for us, CRPP, with its explicit focus on this nexus, is a real opportunity to be transformative, and we keep hearing that word transformative, and I really wanted to unpick that a bit more. And this is about being transformative for women and girls and marginalised groups on the forefront of climate crisis, and reap all those multiplier benefits that we've spoken out. So to zoom into financial inclusion from this lens, Financial inclusion is a key way to empower women on the forefront of climate action, to make choices and take steps to enable them to cope and adapt. And the discussion so far, has been how can we maximise the role of financial services for climate resilience. But if we come back to that definition of transformation, how can we situate this within the opportunity to design policies, services, innovation, partnerships that also unlock and drive women's empowerment? And I really wanted to reference some really good work being done by Fin Equity, CGD, and Data2X, where they've developed a framework for measuring the effect of financial services on women's economic empowerment specifically. And it identifies 3 pathways for measuring this. The first is around access to and use of resources, which includes not just measuring women's participation in economic and sustainable activity, but also those attitudes, those norms, and women's financial literacy and capability. The second is agency and control over income, productive assets, and financial decision-making. And the third is around economic achievements, be it kind of objective measures of income, business profit, but also the ability to cope with risk and setbacks. And I mention this tool because I think it's really important to get to tangible measures of what do we mean by transformative for the nexus between gender, climate, and poverty. And I'd really like to kind of continue a lot of these conversations and partnerships to really unlock this. And for me, a mechanism like CRPP is a huge opportunity to support these really holistic systems approaches to break silos, to shape systems, policies, and invest in innovation. And I'd just like to return to some of the key words that others have mentioned around partnerships, catalytic, laboratories for innovation. And this is exactly what we mean when we're working in the nexus space. And we look forward to taking this forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. So we are at the end of our time. So just a couple of points to wrap up. Not wrap up, you've already wrapped up. But I think first I'm going to reiterate what a lot of colleagues said. For me as well, I think CRPP provides a great space for learning. You come here, you learn, and I think you really have your finger on the pulse, the state of play on any particular topic. So that's been great. And what I also think it helps us do is join the dots between all these great pieces of work that's going on. So that's one. The second, Sunera, I'm going to say what you said is that this session was really about inclusive finance, but its link for adaptation outcomes at the community level. And that doesn't happen by default. It does need to be designed to make sure that access to finance delivers adaptation outcomes for poor, for women, and Jacob also for MSMEs, which are also highly vulnerable and important for inclusive finance. So having said that, from what we've heard, I think everybody will agree, lots happening in this space. And there are 4 things that I've noted where there's, I think, within this community a lot happening and where this community can also help join the dots. So the first one for to deliver inclusive finance for adaptation is, I think, reiterated across all sessions, the need to strengthen capacity of those who provide finance and those who use finance. So that's been sort of highlighted across all sessions. The financial awareness, but also to strengthen the capacity to develop bankable projects, which will then benefit from access to finance. So lots of great stuff happening here, and maybe next time we can also focus on what Jacob was saying. There's some stuff happening on sort of the innovation hubs and stuff for MSMEs as well, to develop climate-smart projects. The second area that I think we focused a lot on is the role of financial services to deliver inclusive finance for adaptation. And I think I've learned a lot around digital finance, and it was also very exciting to hear about fintech solutions to provide inclusive finance. Now that's a space that, again, as a community, we might want to be more proactive with the wealth of knowledge that we have. The digital finance ecosystem, fintech, is evolving, and to make that climate responsive from the start would be great. So for example, using big data and artificial intelligence as decision support tools so that you can identify the most vulnerable populations to help improve financial access for investment in resilience would be great. And there are also great examples of fintech solutions like lending platforms. So here, our neighbor in Malaysia, the Securities Commission, has just piloted this Grow Match platform, which is linking resilient agribusinesses to equity and peer-to-peer lending. That's a great example of access to finance. The third area that I think we've heard some bits around when we're talking about financial inclusion is around the role of financial instruments and how they can be deployed to improve access to finance. So wealth of information around grants and the role of, in the space of social protection and cash transfers, lots of great examples. I think we've heard some around insurance, weather-based insurance, but I think maybe we can do a bit more on the role of guarantees. Jacob, like you said, on loans, equity, debt instrument. There's a lot happening in this space as well, where the knowledge that we have in this room could inform things like the taxonomies which are being used for use of proceeds for green loans. So if we can get into those taxonomies of what is a good investment for community resilience, that'll go a long way, I think. And the final one, there were some points that we heard around the need for an enabling environment if you're supposed to get this inclusive finance ecosystem together. And that's also where I think as a community of practice we can really feed in, because we've got the evidence here. Two things to consider. The first, there's a lot in the enabling environment for finance on taxonomies. For our world, the resilience taxonomy has just been released. Within that, the knowledge that you have on what are the types of activities that build the resilience of communities, if we put that into these taxonomies, it will help financial investors allocate money towards these investments. The second one would be around the work that's emerging around climate-related financial disclosures. And over the next 5 to 7 years, most of our banking and non-banking financial institutions are going to be adopting disclosure standards. Again, out there, the evidence that you have on why it makes economic and financial sense to invest in women, to invest in resilience. If we can get it into that, then it improves decision making and automatically unlocks the finance for these kinds of investors and investments. So I'll stop there, but I think a great opportunity to take the knowledge that we have and sort of plug that into some of these entry points that are emerging to improve this ecosystem. Thanks.